Shalom. Welcome to Center of Gravity. I am Rabbi Eric Yanoff. A couple weeks ago, my third child, Avi, he is 11 years old. He was in Wawa. Now, for those of you who are tuning in from farther away, Wawa is our convenience store, but it's so much more than that. It's part of Philadelphia culture. It really is. You can't not know Wawa if you're in the greater Philadelphia area. Going now as far south, I believe there are even some in Florida along the way as well. Wawa is key to Philadelphia. Anyway, Avi was in Wawa and he'd placed an order and he got his order number, and all of a sudden he was vibrating with excitement. He was so excited, and he showed me why. His number on his order was 67. And he starts 67, 67. And of course, the person behind the counter saw this, thought it was funny, and when his order was ready, she called out, "Order 67." And Avi took a picture of the slip. He showed it to everyone. He forwarded it. He was in sixth, seventh heaven, as it were. He was so excited. What is this 6-7 thing? It means nothing. It was developed online through a meme, through a song popularized by a basketball player who happens also to be 6'7". But the point is, it means absolutely nothing. And yet somehow, for this demographic, and actually for a slightly older demographic that now roll their eyes to it, but also were very much into it at the very beginning, 6-7 somehow binds people together. It is a common language. It is something that makes people of that demographic smile and laugh, mostly because it has almost no meaning. And I want to talk today first about the importance of that bonding together, and second, about the importance of listening to our next generation, to our children, even when we think what they're saying is absolutely meaningless and crazy. So first, 6-7 means almost nothing, and yet it has a cohesive power to it that the people who hear it and smile and have heard it and have seen it somehow are in a group, in a community together. In Judaism, when I was growing up, it was kind of like, and I think this still exists, that if you know that if you're in a group of Jews and they say, "Sheket bivakasha," everyone says, "Hey!" "Sheket bivakasha," "Hey!" It's almost like in your kishkas. This is something that you know, that you feel, even no matter your level of Jewish attachment or education, there's something about that moment that when you look at the people after having said that, "Hey," there's something that brings us together. There's something that joins us together, and that there is power in that. And in that, I think that our children have some wisdom. It's easy, too easy, to dismiss these little passing memes and fads as nonsense. But when we listen to our children, maybe not with 6-7, but with any number of other things, there is incredible wisdom. Sometimes we have to take their insights and bring them to that next level. But when we treat them as sources of wisdom, of interesting ideas and thoughts and topics, we elevate those children. So first I'm going to do that with 6-7, and then I'm going to talk more about what it means to listen to our children. 6-7 is the difference between, in Judaism, Friday and Shabbat. For 6 days, we work. We try to influence our world. We try to make our world move and mold to the purposes that allow us to excel as human beings, to hopefully build a better world, we pretend that we have control over that world for 6 days of the week. For 6 days of the week, we do our best. Do we always have control? Of course not. But we work as if we have control for 6 days. And on the 7th, like a top that we have wound and spun, we let it go for Shabbat. And on that day, we're reminded of the power and the potential of all that we can build, because through all of our creative energies over the 6, on the 7, we see that come to fruition. We have on Shabbat, as it's called, a taste of the world to come. And so in that junction, in that crux between 6 and 7, we see both all of human potential and agency to create, and the greater power of human beings to let it go and enjoy God's creation and partner with God in something bigger than we even could do in those 6 days. The power to let it go, to not necessarily have one monopoly, as we say here at Center of Gravity, on one truth or one creation, but to say there's more out there. That's the 7. And when we look at our kids, there's more out there too. There's way more below the surface. I try to talk to children of all ages, going down to our preschoolers here in the Early Childhood Learning Center at Adath Israel. I try to talk to them as budding adults. I learned this early in my career as an educator. I was at Camp Ramah in the Poconos, a Rosh Edah, which is a division head, essentially, at camp for 13-year-olds. This was back in 1998. And these kids were hysterically funny. They were fun. I had been counselor before that for some of the kids. Now I had these 13-year-olds, not an easy age. But one night, I was looking around the dining hall, which we call the Chadar Ochel, and I noticed that there were 3 girls who had gone, we couldn't find them anywhere. So I went through camp looking for them. They weren't supposed to leave dinner, but yes, I found them. They had stolen cake with icing, the dessert from dinner, and had taken it to one of the places where our group, our Edah, as we call it at camp, gathered, both for social gatherings and also for prayer. So there was an Aron HaKodesh, there was an ark with a Torah in it, right in the center against the wall of one of the room. And they were having a cake fight. I caught them finishing up their cake fight, throwing the cake with the icing. They had gotten icing on the Torah, on the ark. It was a mess. They had had fun, and they realized that they were in trouble. They were in trouble. So I stopped them. I noticed, sort of surveyed the damage. They knew that they had gone way too far when the Torah had cake icing on it. And I told them the first thing they're going to have to do is clean up their mess. Because you didn't act in a trustworthy way, there's going to be a consequence for this. And we talked about what that consequence could be. I don't even remember what it was. But at the end of this brief conversation, as we were sitting in that cake icing filled room that was supposed to be used for prayer just hours from then, I had a moment as a young adult of, I guess, loss of confidence. And I wanted to make sure that my relationship with these girls, who had had fun and had used not good judgment, I wanted to see if my relationship with them had sustained. And they said something to me, those 13-year-old girls, that I have still taken with me in my way that I interact with young people today. I said, "Are we okay?" And they looked at me and they laughed and they said, "Of course we're okay." And I said, "Well, I came down hard on you. You clearly messed up. This is a moment where we have to come back together." And they said, "Of course we're okay." And I said, "Oh." And they said, "We're okay because even though we were acting inappropriately, you didn't talk down to us. You talked to us like we were grown-ups. You explained to us what was going to happen. We accept the consequence of our actions. And you spoke to us like real people. Those were their words. You spoke to us like real people. Sidebar, I have kept in touch with some of these people. They have grown up to be fantastic adults, still very connected to their Judaism. One of them actually teaches science at the local day school. But I learned something from those kids at that point in time. Those kids taught me how to speak to kids. And when we speak to our children as if they have some agency and partnership in this, as if they're part of the 6, then when it comes part of the relationship that goes forward, the 7, then they're still with us. They're very much still with us. And when we listen to kids, they come up with gems. Sometimes we have to pull it out of them, but when you open up and you give them that voice, they say some incredible things. On an earlier episode of this podcast, I shared an insight that a preschooler shared about the phrase Kol ha'olam kulo gesher sar ma'od, that the entire world is like a very narrow bridge, and the point of our existence is to try not to be afraid when we're going along that narrow bridge. And I said, said to the kids, what do you think that means? And they said, well, when you're on a bridge, you can't stand next to someone and hold their hand like a mommy or a daddy or a friend and know that they're with you. I learned that from a kid. It is easy to dismiss kids. Sometimes they do or say ridiculous things. Sometimes their prefrontal cortex, or lack thereof, of an inability to see the consequences of their actions or their words, is maddening. Very often they are not students of history, and by history I don't just mean world history, I mean history of something that happened 4 minutes ago and is likely to happen again when they do the same irresponsible thing. Sometimes they are, because they don't recognize the consequences of their actions, or sometimes they are hurtful or harmful. We have seen that on college campuses. The encampments were hurtful and harmful, made people feel unsafe as Jews, and the instinct of the world and of the media at that time was to go up to those students who were in those encampments and make fun of them by showing how ill-informed they were. They didn't even know what cause they were supporting. They just thought it was where people were gathering. They were indignant that they couldn't DoorDash to this place that they weren't legally allowed to be according to the college rules. These are things that, yes, make them look young and inexperienced and even stupid. But they're not stupid. They are seeing their world through a very specific lens, a lens that may be faulty, a lens that may lack facts and sensitivity that we can help them gain. And somewhere along the way, they will become our teachers. There's a great line from the prophet Malachi, this line is read in the Haftarah, the prophetic reading just before the holiday of Passover, when we celebrate redemption. And how does this prophet understand redemption? The prophet understands redemption by saying there's a moment when Elijah is coming. That's how you know it's a moment of big redemption. Elijah, the prophet, is coming, and that prophet will allow parents to well hear their children and children to well hear their parents. As a parent, I know that my kids don't always hear what I'm saying. But as a parent also, I'm not so sure I'm always listening to them and what they have to say. When we listen to our kids, we are preparing them to be the next generation of adults. We are handing them wisdom and legacy and, yes, wealth and certainly hopes for the future. We're handing it off to them. There's this great moment at the beginning of the Mishnah, of the rabbinic teaching of Pirkei Avot, where it says Moses received the Torah on Mount Sinai. But what does it say about that next? Passed it on to Joshua. Joshua to the elders, the judges, to the people of the great assembly. The idea here is not that we hold on to our Torah, that we hold on to our wisdom, but that we share it and that we give it, and that we know that this is a two-way street, that we hear and gain wisdom. Sometimes where they are right now feels like nonsense. 6-7 is intended to be nonsense. But in every generation, At every moment, every year, some phrase or saying has been said. Things that my parents thought were ridiculous that I was saying, I'm sure now it's an intergenerational gift that we think that the next generation is speaking in some code to be in dialogue. But that code is an entree. It's a code to allow ourselves to be engaged, to be engaging, to be learning together. There is value in playing together with our kids in that place by engaging them, because they may hear from us, they may learn from us in ways that they are currently misguided, and we may learn from them in ways that they are going to take our wisdom forward into the next generation. That is a gift. It is not nonsense. It is a gift that keeps on giving for many, many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes, 6, 7 generations to come. From Center of Gravity, I'm Rabbi Eric Yanoff. Shalom.
Thank you for tuning in to Center of Gravity. We are working to make this podcast as engaging and meaningful as we can, and so we need your help. If you have any feedback, questions, comments, thoughts, ideas for future podcasts, or any other ways that we can reach you, please email us at centerofgravity@adathisrael.org. Thanks so much for tuning in. Shalom.